Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. Another great day in quarantine. And if you're keeping count, I got a good friend of mine that's keeping count and post every day. I think we're on day 23 if you're keeping count. So, and if you're like me, we're also in I'm protesting the queue. No shave, no haircut until I'm released from the queue. That's what's going down here in Colorado. And got a good friend of mine who is not really in the queue, but she's probably in her own sort of queue because I think we all are at this point. DeVon Hankins. DeVon, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me on board. I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's going to be fun because DeVon is a character, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have her on the show. And I mean character in the good sense of good people and solid character about what she's doing and what she wants to do and how she's getting things done. So I'd like to jump in because you're a farm girl living in the big city of Louisville, Kentucky.
Right.
Did I say it right?
Yes, Louisville. Absolutely.
Louisville,
we would let you across the borders now. So
I might be able to sneak in as long as I got.
We'd let you sneak in. I'd vouch for you.
I have to think about it though. So if somebody asked me without thinking, I'd blow it. What I'm really curious about is growing up on the farm like you did and then jumping into the agricultural business. I think from what I hear, it's kind of a diversion of what most people believe. So what is it about agriculture that still pulls you back to it?
Well, like I said, when I was a young girl, we grew up on our family farm. It has now matured into a fully operational certified Angus production farm, and we sire certified registered Angus. So much like here in Kentucky, where you have equine bloodlines, we have the Angus bloodlines. And when I graduated, so I did the whole thing, right? 4-H, of course you don't live on a farm and live in the country back in the day and not do 4-H. And we kids, I've got 3 other siblings, and, we all showed cattle and swine and, sheep, and we had every animal you could think of, even showed horses. So we ran the gamut. So it was, it's running thick in my blood, agriculture. And of course we were production farm. When I graduated from high school, believe it or not, I did not know that I could go to college to get a degree in agriculture. Okay. And when they told me I could go to college and keep doing what I had, grown up doing, I was like, there's no way they're going to let me get away with that. Right. So, I go to Mizzou, which is University of Missouri-Columbia, top ag school, in the nation. And,
well, I got to stop you. I don't know if I'm going to agree with. We're going to have to agree to disagree.
Arm wrestle, Otis.
Top ag school in the nation.
Top.
You are a guest. So
see, y'all use water in those 2 states though. A&M and Mizzou. You guys have water. We're out here farming in the desert. It's a whole other ballgame.
So true. But yeah, so I went to Mizzou and got a bachelor's in just kind of general agriculture and agronomy, which is the study of crop production. And then I went back a few years later and got my master's degree in ag economics with a focus in marketing and finance. And so for me, it was natural. Like that's, farm kid, that's what I knew to do. Now, clearly what was unique for me is that there aren't a lot of Black-owned family farms, and there are very few Black farmers. And so, being a Black female ag student, you can only imagine that I was a rare entity, amongst my, fellow students. But that has, that's worked to my advantage as well. So it's opened a lot of doors for me.
Tell me about that. I'd love to hear that,
About
about how that's worked to your advantage, because I think that's a really cool thing to think about and talk about.
Yeah. So, my parents, we grew up very traditional. Of course, you grow up in rural America. It's typically very traditional, regardless of race. And so they always taught us about hard work, right? Keep your nose clean, keep your head down, do the right thing, work hard. So that whole American work ethic, right? And I think that oftentimes when I would engage, whether it would be, a job or a project or whatever the case may be, a lot of times people were surprised to see me. My name, oftentimes surprises people because most people think I'm a guy, and, until of course they hear me on the phone, and then they see me, and then I'm a female, and then I'm Black, and, so people are stunned, and that's often to my advantage because I've just defied every notion that you've had in your head about who you're getting ready to engage. And I think what that does is it disarms people in a good way, right? And then, people are usually interested in the journey. So they want to learn about ag, or they want to figure out, how did you, because a lot of people, I think, assume that I come from the city because I'm African American, right? And it's just like, no, I'm a farm kid. I grew up on the farm in the country, deep in mud and wearing cowboy boots, so and I have to tell you, it was funny going off to college, because being an Aggie and African American, that we had a lot of African American students who were from the city, and so they didn't know how to take me. As I'm showing up in cowboy boots and big silver buckles, as big, it's I had my straw 10-gallon hat. I mean, because we still did shows. And so they're trying to figure out, who is this person, right? Like, where did she come from? And I'm looking at them like, dude, I think I'm pretty normal. So, but yeah, so that's, Otis, I think I revel in my uniqueness, and I think that everyone should, right? We're different, and I think the more you embrace your uniqueness, it allows other people to really be comfortable around you and kind of open up to engage you. So, yeah.
Well, I had another question. I'll get back into the ag side, but I could stay on this side for a second. I like the idea of the embrace your uniqueness. I think that's great because when you look at it from that perspective and you kind of just embrace who you are and just be genuine to yourself, then people see that you're being genuine to yourself and people are more genuine to you, and it kind of just starts that whole cycle, and it's a real great positive feedback you get.
Absolutely. I think that is one thing I have learned with all of the work that I do as a strategist, as a policy analyst, enterprise transformation, project manager, and you're working with teams and dynamic individuals. And you've got people who are really wanting to do good and don't always know how to. And you need to, as a leader in that space, you have to come with your authentic self, right? You have to be genuine. And like you said, Camden, then that allows other people space to be genuine. You give them a comfort zone, right, to be able to speak their authentic voice where they're comfortable speaking, their truth. I think when people are in an environment where they can't speak their truth and the team is dependent upon solving a problem, resolution, right, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get there. And if you get there, it's going to be half-baked, right? So I think the more that each of us, particularly as leaders, can move in our authentic space and consistently have the courage to kind of speak our truth, whatever that is, right? In a way that, doesn't tend for harm, clearly. But I think it enables then and facilitates, that exchange of really moving the ball forward as a collective.
You hit on something that I think is really, we've talked about it before, and I'm gonna jump into rugby right now, even though I know you're, well, unless that's a
I'm
secret I don't
actually
know
a
about you.
rugby fan, Otis.
You're
I
a
was
rugby
so
fan.
excited when you said you were involved with rugby, and I'm like, you know what? I'm hitting him up for tickets. He's gonna have to take me to a game. I've been to one live,
Anytime.
but
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, I would love to.
So what I was going at it, and what you were talking about is that being authentic, and also what I hear is that confidence in who you are, right? And that's a really beautiful place to be, but it's also, some people look at it as arrogance when you are confident in your ability and you're confident in who you are. And my reference to rugby is our scrum halves, you know, the always the little guy, you know, always make fun of the little guy and the twinkle toes and the pretty hair, and he's like that little rat that just he's always going after this and that, and but he's doing that because he knows, and she, because it's women also knows what they can do and knows their job, and they're confident in their job, and they're telling people what to do to go and be successful. And that's that key piece, I think, right there that you're talking about, because when you hold yourself that way, other people are like, oh, look at DeVon, man. She's okay. She knows what she's doing. She's confident. I'm trusting and believing in her. I'm going to follow her.
Yeah, I think too, what it does, you know, it two things. You have the person who is open to change, right? Who sees that someone has achieved a level of confidence and self-awareness and authenticity, and they're like, you know what? I want that, right? And they come to you and they're like, how did you get that? So that's an opportunity to coach, right? To mentor, to train, to develop and build capability in the individual. And then there's also that person that does look at you and say, oh, you're being arrogant. What you have to remember in that moment is that we're all a reflection of one another, right? As we engage each other. When someone thinks of you as arrogant, that's an issue with them. We all know this intellectually, right? And most people are like, well, it's their problem. Well, yes, it is. But to a certain extent, you know, I had a friend in grad school who always used to say that the one with the greater wisdom bears the responsibility, okay? And so what that meant to me in those exchanges is that if that person comes at me with this, oh, you're arrogant, I need to immediately, one, not take it personally, but two, try to figure out what is it, right, that's the missing link for them, and try to engage them a way to navigate around that, right? Then to kind of bring them in closer to you so they can begin then to explore an opportunity to become more authentic. Because when people think ill or negative of you, and you have shown your best and authentic self, what they're experiencing is a lack of that thing that they see in you, right? And so they're responding negatively to that. It's not that what you have is a bad thing, it's that they recognize the lack. And so you have two people in those different scenarios, both have recognized and acknowledged a lack. One has decided, I want to pursue and get my own. I want to figure out how they got that. The other chooses, right, not to take action, not to move, but instead, right, kind of reflect back on you, their own negativity. But I think, Otis, we've talked about leadership a lot. I think as a leader, you owe that individual to like lead by example, right? To really dig in, not be courageous enough to confront that darkness in a good way, and not dismiss them, not just assume that, it's their problem, that they need to kind of go on their merry way. I will tell you, when I was younger, it took courage. Now I'm older, I just don't care. I just, you know what, you're in my space, heaven help you. But what I have found is when I have taken the time to do that, these people have become very good friends and probably my most staunch supporters, and I of them, right? They're even stronger relationships than oftentimes the person who was open to, pursuing their authentic self in a positive way, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to kind of kind of throw us all back together with the rugby side of things. But I think it's something when you look at just any team environment, rugby is a great example for it. As far as the teamwork and the collaboration and all that, those different aspects go, you have to know your skill set because there are so many different jobs that are going on the entire time to where if you shouldn't be doing that job, if there's somebody better at it, then you shouldn't be doing that job. My easy example for it is in high school, I could run the rugby ball. I could break a tackle or two a game probably. Like maybe, I might score a try. When I got to college, I was not a ball runner. My job was to get behind someone else and go protect the ball once they got tackled. And as soon as you make that switch, you're a much more productive athlete because that's your job and you just keep going after it and going after it. And then to add to your rat comment for the scrum half, this is something I've loved with Spit and Chicklets is the hockey podcast I listen to, but they talk about guys. In hockey, you have goons that, just brawlers and brawlers and brawlers. And then you have the rats who are the guys who can't actually fight near as much, but they're just poking their nose into every little thing because they know if they poke their nose in there enough, you might throw a punch at them and then you have to go sit in the box. And that's all it is they know their job. Like, hey, if I can go piss off their star player and he's going to mess up, then I did my job today.
Right.
The instigators.
Yeah. And those make the most phenomenal teams when everyone knows what their A game is, okay? And the moment that you start to move into your B game, good teams, when people move into their B game, right, they drop back and they let the person that is their A game space, it's time for them to play. And so people are pivoting in and out, right? But always maintaining a continuous flow of A game play. And I tell you, when you have the opportunity to be on a team like that and to lead a team like that, those are like dreams come true. Those are, those are like fond memories of days gone by, when you have that opportunity to work with a team that, like you guys are saying, that understand what their role is and they're capable of stepping in and out of the game when it's time, because they know that the goal is to have a continuous A game play.
And I think to kind of tie it back to what we're saying about being genuine and knowing yourself, I know I've talked with a few of my buddies that I played with at the college level, and I kind of mentioned that type of thing to them. Like, yeah, I kind of made this mental switch, and, I coach rugby. Not many of my old buddies do, so I kind of nerd out on it a little bit. But I was kind of talking about this type of thing, and he was like, it was honestly the nicest thing ever because I knew you were always behind me and I could run around and do stupid stuff, but you were behind me ready to protect me if I got tackled. So it was always fine. So I think that really just illustrates the metaphor perfectly of when you're genuine and you know yourself, you allow someone else to be genuine and then they can perform at their best.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the genuinity, the genuine word, when you are that's that confidence I was talking about earlier, because you have to be confident in yourself, because what I've seen and what I've experienced over the years is when people lack confidence, they try to do their B game because they're afraid that their role, and this is a great thing to talk about in the season that we're in. I think that's where I'm comfortable calling this is our season, the COVID season, is I do what I do best, and I don't do what everybody else does because I'm confident in my role and I'm confident in my position in my team. I know that if I do the best in my A game, that my whole team is going to do the best in their A game, and I don't have to try and do what Bob does to secure my job. And I think I'd love to dive into that a bit with you, DeVon, and get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think when you understand who you are and what you're capable of, right? I think the universe responds to that. You know, people, even though they don't know why, they respond to that. When you know where your place is on the wall, so to speak, right? When you know your place on the wall, you can give room to other people's place on the wall. You understand that you moving to the right or to the left is not correct, because that is not your space. You're not going to do well, and therefore the collective is not going to do well. The trouble comes is for people who don't understand who they are, what they're good at, and that's a lifelong journey, right? We're all kind of learning that. But I think to have the courage to accept who you are. And what I mean by that is that you guys are talking about the rats, and I'm learning some of the rugby language, right? The smallest, tiniest player, like you said, Camden, has a role. And his or her role is just as significant as, you know, I go to football because my son played football most of his young life, okay? He's only 20, but, you know, he thinks he's old.
Am I old enough to laugh at that one?
Yes, you're old. I think so. But, you know, what I remember in football is that, you know, he had a good friend who was the quarterback, and he was the center, you know, and sometimes he would play some other positions. But the thing is that they both knew their role, and that when they played their roles the way that they should, it was sweet. It was a thing to behold. They surprised themselves. The team would surprise themselves, right? But when they did not play their role, right, they became unsure of what the play should have been, right? And you guys know how this goes. There was absolute chaos, right? They didn't know how to pivot into somebody else's role. Well, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to still play your role. When chaos happens, you're supposed to still play your role, right? That is what keeps chaos from just outright mayhem then, right? So I think too that when, for people who, as a leader, okay, manager, supervisor, when you talk about your staff and your employees, when you recognize that somebody doesn't understand what their role is, what their value is on the team, you know, that's an opportunity as a leader. That's an opportunity to go build capability, right? That is an opportunity to help somebody walk into their authentic self. And not just, you know, Otis and I and one of the other founders of an org that we work with on, we talk about servant leadership, right? And so as a servant leader, you're wanting to build the capability and the authentic self of that individual just for the individual's benefit, you know? Then there's this additional benefit, right, that comes to the whole team. And so I think, you know, if anybody needs to understand what their life purpose is at a minimum, it's one is to walk in your own authenticity, right? Is to get to that place to know who you are, what your value is. And then the second is always make an effort to help others on that journey. You know, that's the only way we get to the greater good of the whole. So I don't know, Otis, if I answered that for you. I'm very passionate about this journey of finding your authentic self, finding your voice, your truth. I think we have so many people who are lost, and it's because they're holding on to belief systems and beliefs that no longer serve them. They know something's off, they know something's wrong, but either they don't have the strength or the courage to kind of defy what has been structured around them, or they can't find like their soul tribe, right? They can't find their tribe that will help them, through that journey. So, I'm one of those folks, and that's one of the reasons why I think the world of Otis, Camden, is that, we understand that now that we have found our authentic selves, we know who we are, we understand that our next responsibility is to help other people on that journey, be it teams, organizations, individuals, communities, whatever the case may be. So, yeah.
Something that comes to mind as we keep talking about the authenticity and all that. Something I think I got from Tom Matson, and recently it might have been one of those where I heard him say it first, and now I'm seeing it everywhere. But it's about following your genius in the entrepreneur sense of just like, look, you are good at this, go do it. Try to work and build a team so that you can follow your genius and keep working on this. I know I've got a project I'm working on now, and it's getting into the tech world, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. I took 4 coding classes in high school. I kind of get the gist of what coding is, but I have no idea how to build anything that I'm talking about. But I know what it's supposed to look like in my head, and I know the business model stuff. But it's about finding people to put into your team so that you can follow your genius and just keep moving forward with what you're good at. And whether you call it, to go more artsy with it, makes me think of the War of Art, which we've been referencing a lot. Wherever you're feeling the most resistance, that's where your genius is going. Wherever your genius is going, it's your muse, whatever you want to call it. That's what you are. That's what your genius is. That's what your skill set is. Doesn't matter what kind of terms you want to use to put it together. Go follow that.
And I believe wholeheartedly that the universe will respond. Like, it's been funny because I've been using this analogy in so many conversations with folks over the last couple of months. It's the Field of Dreams movie, Build It and They Will Come, right? And so you are stepping out there, Camden, you're like, I have this urge, this need to create this thing. And I don't know why, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't have people that I know to call and say, hey, come help me. But the universe is saying, Camden, just move, right? Just move. And it will bring what you need will come to you because you are doing a good thing, right? You are offering a good thing. And I think that that is what I'm talking about. We have so many gifted and talented people who are bound by belief systems that, I've got to have a venture capitalist, and I don't have the right network, and I don't have the right level of education, and and I'm like, there are too many people who have come before us that had nothing, right? And I think we are born alchemists. We are born to create. We are born to co-create, right? With the universe, with, whoever you call God, okay? I'm Christian, God, okay? But the universe source is going to respond to that. And I think why a lot of people are so unhappy, and Otis, we talk about this during this downtime. People have an opportunity to reflect on their unhappiness. I think why a lot of people are unhappy, because they haven't done what you're doing, Camden. They're not pursuing that thing that keeps coming back to them. Someone gave up being a ballerina in order to become an accountant because during that time, accountants made a lot of money, and that's what they were told they needed to do because they were good at numbers. Well, doggone it. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're supposed to do it. I mean, how many people wake up every day, go to a job to do something they're really good at, get paid well for, and absolutely hate that job, right? That's because they didn't do the Camden move, right? We can put a name to it now, Otis. And
I don't know if I'd use that one.
Well,
Like I said earlier, You are the guest.
Okay.
Thank you, DeVon.
Otis knows I make up words all the time. So, we're going to call it the Camden move. But I think because people don't do that. And I think Otis, we've had this conversation a couple of different times in a couple of different ways. This downtime has given a lot of people to assess their unhappiness. And, what's going to make me happy? And maybe going to this job I've been going to for 20 years, I don't think that's making me happy. Or, raising my kids in a certain way, that's not making me happy. Whatever the case may be. And, I'm very hopeful and prayerful that, when we come out of this season, and I love that language, when we come out of this season, it is my sincerest hope that more people have awakened to what doesn't make them happy and have the courage to do a Camden move, right? Because that's like an awakening, right? And the beginning journey of finding authentic self. And I'm so excited for you, Camden, because your dad and I have done the same thing, right? We have decided to, kick off our shackles. We're no longer going to be oppressed by, belief systems that no longer serve us. And doggone it, we're going to go do the thing that we have a passion for, whether people think we're crazy or not. And if you help one, that counts. That counts big time. So yeah, I'm totally I'm all about that.
I think one of the things we're kind of touching on and kind of going into the current the season, as y'all put it, that when you have this and you reflect inward and you kind of look at, whether it's your purpose, your happiness, whatever you're reflecting on, then what the opportunity that we're all talking about here is then your ability to create a purpose, follow your genius, whatever it is, and go after that. And then what I think is really interesting is this something, Dad, you and I have been talking about as far as focus on what you can control and then create your path forward out of things you can control. And then I think the other piece of that, to tie it to what you've been saying, DeVon, is it's invoking the muse, right? When you invoke the muse, it is you going and doing the work because you know that things will happen if you do the work.
Absolutely.
That's what the muse is. You can think of as, some mystical creature that's telling you what to do and telling you, how to shape your sculpture. That's not what it is. You got there and you put in the hard work day after day, and it allowed you to find that point of creative genius.
Right. I think everything that we're intended to create is already in us, right? That idea you had, that's not anything new. It's been with you, Cam, right? It has been, you have been messing with that idea for a long time, even maybe when you weren't conscious of it. There was something that kept pinging you, kept bothering you, okay, that would make you uncomfortable. And I think as time goes on, and I think your dad can speak to this, you become more and more uncomfortable, right? And that is the universe trying to tell you, take the step, take the step. You can't you bother your buddies, right? Whenever they talk to Camden, this is all he talks about is X, right? That's a heads up from the universe, dude. It is time. As Scott likes to say, Otis, Camden, Scott, another friend of ours. Scott likes to say, move out and draw fire, right? That's what you need to do, is move out and draw fire, and everything else will fall into place. Absolutely.
So I want to figuratively bring you back to the farm.
Okay.
And what give us like 2 or 3 handful, whatever, those key lessons that you picked up growing up on a farm, and how those have been your foundation to get you to the woman and place that you are right now.
One thing I do know is that you have to take care of the land. We have to take care of this earth. The earth takes care of us. The earth feeds us. It provides us with resources. And if you take care of the earth, it will take care of you. This I know for a fact. Okay, and that's what I learned. Really tilling the land, learning to take care of it in its natural state with natural resources. So that's the one thing. And I don't mean to use this language negatively. I'm not an environmentalist. I'm not a tree hugger, right? I don't identify myself that way. What I do understand is that the earth is a living thing, and if we kill it, we kill it. Like it's done, right? And so we kill it, we're done. So we need to get that. And whatever that looks like for any particular individual, we just really need to get that. I think the second thing is that life does not require it being complicated, right? A simple life is a worthy life. I think we've made our lives too complex. It is causing us problems. It is causing our children problems. It is causing our community problems. A simple life. And again, each person gets to define that, but it just means, just taking out the unnecessary chaos in your life, whatever that looks like for you. I don't know if you've ever lived in rural towns and in the country. Old folks live forever. They don't go away. They live forever. They're always watching us young people, right? And telling on us and stuff. But that was always their wisdom, was live a simple life. It doesn't mean you can't be a country kid and move off to the big city, right? And get a big fancy job. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying keep your life simple. If there are things that no longer serve you, let them go. If they're bringing complications and complexity to your life that is not required, let that go. And then I will say the other thing is, and this goes back, I think, to the core of our conversation. Being, and I guess that's my stream of consciousness with all three of these, is be yourself. Embrace you. If you don't embrace you are done. Like you are not relevant if you can't embrace you. And most of us inherently want to leave a legacy of some sort, right? It may not be millions of dollars. It may not be a foundation, okay? But we do want to leave some sort of legacy. Only when you are in your authentic self can you leave an enduring legacy that gives back to mankind in a way that advances that conversation once you're gone, right? And so, Otis, I think that's it. I think those are the three things that kind of growing up in a rural town. The town's very big now, but at the time we had 2,400 people. And one
you knew
high
everybody, and everybody knew you.
Oh my God! Yeah, I remember when we first got McDonald's. McDonald's came into town, and I kid you not. Okay, we had a parking lot to the McDonald's, but there was a horse hitch post in front of the McDonald's because we kids used to ride into town on our horses and our bikes as we got, but it was not uncommon for us kids to get on our horses, and everybody kind of head, into town. And so the McDonald's, when it initially opened, had a horse hitch in front of it where you hitch your horse and it goes.
Well, that's a first for me. I mean, I grew up in Texas, and I don't think I ever saw a McDonald's with a hitching post. So that's awesome. That's
a very short time, and I can vaguely remember it, But anyway, I just thought that was like only in Wentzville, Missouri. So yeah.
Well, and the other thing you said, and I'm going to beat Camden to the punch on this because I know this is what he's thinking, is Leonard Skinner is rolling through my head right now, and being a simple man, you know, because you nailed it. I mean, and you, I don't know if you were trying to quote the song or not, but if you go back and look at the lyrics of the song,
Okay.
that is what you just said. It is
Wow.
be a simple man and focus on what's important. So awesome.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Cam. I know you had something on.
Well, I mean, I was I didn't have the Leonard Skinner going, even though I was singing "Simple Man" in the back of my head and seeing what line I wanted to pull out for a quote. But I wanted to get back on the ag side and kind of the ag economics and the policy side. So for most of our listeners, this will probably be about when they tune out. But for my few ag friends, this will be a very important time. So being in the beef industry right now, I find it as one of the most interesting kind of not even turnover yet, but the future of the industry I find very interesting. I'd love to kind of get your take on that, whether it's I know that 2 or 3 years ago, Texas A&M researchers were cloning Wagyu beef cattle so that they could reproduce the beef exactly the same and at a tenth of the cost or something along those lines. I know there's all the different artificial meats and those type of things, whether it's the lab grown meats or the meat substitutes which aren't meat, or all these different angles that are coming at it. And I just thought it would be interesting with your background in ag economics and policy to kind of get your take on what the trajectory of the industry might be looking at and where you see it kind of shaking out with these new emerging threats.
So let me not just speak to the cattle industry. Let me just talk about food production in general, okay? If that's okay, and I think I'll be able to answer your question. We have to come up with a viable way that is not harmful to the earth or to humans, right? To ensure levels of production where we can feed our people, right? Our people being the earth, okay? We're quite capable of that. Now, we all know there are many reasons within a capitalistic society why we don't meet the needs to feed all of our people, okay? I won't even go down that road. We all know the whys. But I think that as we do the genetic development of foodstuffs and food products versus going with heirloom and organic, right? We know the science of this. Like, this is not up for debate, right? You don't have to be a high functioning intellectual to understand that organic and using heirloom seeds are probably the best thing for us, right? However, I do understand that we have to, from a scientific standpoint, we have to figure out a way to produce and grow food in a manner where we can get the quantity, right, and stabilize the quality of the product, right? Because the assumption of the quality of the product and you know, when you talk about these genetic trials, is trying to ensure that the nutrients and the proteins that are going to be beneficial, right, to the human body, particularly a human body that has been in deficit, right, that you create a product that is high in that proficiency so that you can quickly mitigate the risk of the nutrient deficient individual, okay? And I'm keeping it very simple. I understand the argument for that, but there's a level of responsibility that we hold as co-creators as we gain more and more power to manipulate genetic code and formation, that we're mindful that there are some that we remain mindful that we're always doing it for the right cause and reason, right? You know, it's one thing when, in fact, you know, one of my first year in college, I had internship in agronomy is my background, so crop production. And so we were working with legumes and we were trying to, you know, soil composition, legumes put nutrients back into the soil. And so we were looking at different varieties and varieties that would grow faster, produce more beans, right? So that's important. So you modify the genetic code to get that kind of outcome. What you don't do is modify, in my humble opinion, is to modify the genetic code just to create a monetization of the value add on that product. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like it has to be, because I won't curse, but that stuff backfires on us. It backfires on us every single freaking time. And so I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's really my true internal position on, modifying the genetic code, whether it be plants or animals. We have a responsibility to make sure we understand why we are doing it and to what we are doing it for.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to something we've been talking about with General Shrenko last week, was basically it's about, you have to understand what your purpose is and understand what your objective is. And as much as the objective is to feed everybody, you have to make sure you're feeding them the right things. The easy example that I'll use for it is, because I did agribusiness, so I got to study this and everything, was the with the Green Revolution.
Hey, brother.
Oh yeah. But with the Green Revolution, what's really interesting about it is it did a great job in eliminating poverty around the world. Oh my gosh, like starvation rates just went down like crazy, and people stopped starving, except everyone was getting sick with all these new types of diseases, because basically what happened is we said, oh, well, we can provide food, and we got really good with cereal crops and got everybody really good. And so, hey, yeah, everyone in the world can grow rice now. We're good with that. But that's not the best thing for you. And it winds up having this weird effect to where you get rid of, relatively speaking, of course, on a global scale, you get rid of starvation as this huge risk factor. But then you have all this, like, malnutrition is not really the right word there, but you have all these nutritional side effects to where it's like, yes, like, yeah, we can all get rice and we can all eat rice, but it's really not great for you to just be eating rice all the time. And that the other side of it kind of lagged back. But you have to look at that, and from a production standpoint, what's the happy medium there? Just like you're saying, can I provide the nutritional benefits while changing and going this direction to get a greater more efficiency in our production, or is this somewhere where we're going to lose? And so it's just something where you have to be looking around and trying to focus on that overall purpose and the big picture.
Right. But resolution is not solution. Okay, and people don't get that. Resolution is not always solution. Okay, and as a lifelong strategist, I'm here to tell you, a lot of people will default to resolution and never reach solution. Okay, and this is the scenario that you're talking about right now. Okay, and that's what I'm saying, that we have a responsibility to understand, like you said, the objective, right? The intent. Is it just to feed people and keep them from starving? No. It's to feed people and make sure that they have nutrients so that they can be productive in the society for which they choose to participate in, so that they can go and do the thing that they were put here to. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's why I'm saying resolution is not necessarily solution. And it would be nice for a lot of people to kind of get that, who are in decision-making arenas. And I think, you kind of talked a little bit about being a strategist and a policy analyst. One of the things that I learned early on was my real power is in helping people develop sound policies and standards to ensure that we check the right boxes, the relevant boxes, for not the output, but for the outcome. That rice is the output, right? It did not meet the outcome. It was not the solution. It was just the resolution. And so I think, therein lies my, passion for what I do, is helping leaders, teams, individuals at every level of life that they engage in, to understand the significance of those two, and where it's that. So why isn't this working? We fed everybody. Starvation rates have come down, but health rates have gone up. Well, it was a resolution, not a solution. That's why, you know.
Yeah, no, and I think that's
Camden, you got me on my soapbox.
that's all right. Well, I'm just thinking right now, Dad, we go ahead and start pulling out the calendars. We need to have DeVon back on with Dr. Quello and just have a full ag episode. Really dive in. Maybe get James back on here too.
That would, that would be a great one to have Dr. Quello back on with DeVon. There's some great synergies there and philosophy.
I know I was already writing down. I almost got into the wizard and the prophet again, which is just so we'll leave that for another time.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah, you got I just bit, so
well,
that secured it for me, Camden.
Perfect. Now we got you booked for next time. Well, let's go ahead and go through our wrap up on it. I guess I'll get us started with it, Dad, today. So we always like to go through DeVon with what we learned, and I think something you said, and it's one of the many quotes, and I find this happening more and more, where it reminded me of other things I've heard, but I like the way you said it a lot, of just the one with the greater wisdom bears the responsibility. There's lots of different ways you can look at that, but it's really just if you're the wiser, wiser, anyone?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yep. Wiser one. If you're the wiser one, it's your responsibility to help people who aren't on that same level as you. And I think that's something where you look at it, the quote that comes to mind, I think it's Seneca, is talking about how if you hear someone use a word wrong, that you shouldn't correct them for using the word wrong, you should teach them into using the word properly. And it's kind of just that slight different perspective of, it's not you say, come on, man, get better. It's teaching them how to be better in the big picture. So I love that, and I think that's a great one. Dad, what'd you learn today?
Well, I liked the way DeVon put the lack of that thing in themselves is what creates that insecurity that they accuse, the accusation of you being arrogant, right? That's a great way of understanding it. It kind of flows back into that. If you're more mindful of yourself, when you become more mindful of yourself, you can also understand other perceptions from people and why they're thinking that way. So, and it goes back to what you were just talking about, Cameron. It's don't correct them, it's teach them. And I think that's a great mindset to have, is not to be overwhelmed in that respect and not to be accusational, because the natural reaction when somebody accuses you of being arrogant is to attack back, right? That's what we want to do, as opposed to, well, why, what's their perception of me that makes them believe that I am arrogant? And I think that's a really great place to understand and have that perception.
You know what that reminds me of, Dad, when you talk about like the perception, we've talked about it before in terms of communication, kind of like the encoding and decoding. We do that with perceptions. It's the same type of concept, that same little flow chart of people look at you, and because of whatever world lens they view you through, they have all of these assumptions that come out of the air, and you have to be able to look at them, look from their worldview and see what that is, and that's how you move forward.
And the only way that you can do that successfully is your ego has to stand down, right? Your ego, that's that greater wisdom, okay, bearing that responsibility. Your ego has to stand down in order to navigate theirs, and then come to them with grace, right? Rather than the correction, you come to them with grace, right? And then in that space, and only in that space, can people be taught.
What'd you learn, DeVon?
That Camden and I need to hang out, because I have found a tribe member as an Aggie and a brother in like mind. So, but I think I love some of this language, and I'm trying to think of Camden. What did you the muse, right? You talked about the muse, and you said. What was the other one about the entrepreneur, the intelligent? What was that?
Following your genius.
Following your genius. I love that. Following your genius, because it's in you, right? It is yours. It's in you. Follow that rather than the belief systems that no longer serve you. And so I'm just like, yeah, that's that's really cool. I like that. So,
Well,
and
thank
I
you.
really enjoyed chatting with you guys. Like, this has been so much fun. This has really been cool. Thanks
Well, we
for
really
having me on, guys.
appreciate you taking the time today, and it's good to chat with you and learn a little bit more about your philosophy and how that foundation that you have from getting your hands down into the dirt and how that is giving you the solid foundation to be who you are today and be the leader that you are. So really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule today.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
Thanks for being here, DeVon. Thank you all again for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our guest, DeVon Hankins. Ooh, did I get that right? Hankins.
Hankins, yeah.
Hankins, there we go. I didn't write it down in front of me. DeVon Hankins. And our sponsors, MASH, Military and Athletic Strength Hemp Oil. You can check out our recent episodes of The Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And check out a full archive at thecamandotishow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks again. See y'all next week.